Sarah Martinez walked into the crowded coffee shop, her worn sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. At 28, she had learned to make herself invisible in rooms full of people. Her oversized hoodie and faded jeans told a story that most people didn't bother to read. The barista barely looked up as she ordered her usual black coffee, paying with exact change counted from a small cloth purse. The tech startup where Sarah worked as a janitor buzzed with energy every morning. Young entrepreneurs in expensive suits rushed past her as she emptied trash bins and wiped down conference tables. They spoke in loud voices about million-dollar deals and revolutionary apps that would change the world. Sarah moved through their conversations like a ghost, invisible and unnoticed. Marcus Thompson, the company's CEO, was particularly dismissive. He had built his empire from nothing, or so he claimed in every interview. His corner office overlooked the city, and his voice carried across the entire floor when he spoke. Sarah had cleaned his office countless times, listening to him brag about his latest acquisitions and mock people he considered beneath him. "The cleaning lady is here again," Marcus would say to his friends during video calls, not caring that Sarah could hear every word. "Some people are just born to serve, you know? They don't have what it takes to build something real." Sarah never responded. She simply continued her work, methodically cleaning each surface until it gleamed. Her movements were precise and efficient, though no one bothered to notice the military-like discipline in her routine. She arrived at exactly the same time each day, followed the same pattern through the building, and left without speaking to anyone unless absolutely necessary. The other employees had created their own stories about her. Jessica from marketing whispered that Sarah probably never finished high school. Tom from accounting joked that she looked like someone who had given up on life. They made these comments freely, assuming that someone in her position couldn't possibly understand their world of stock options and networking events. During lunch breaks, Sarah would sit alone in the small break room designated for maintenance staff. She ate simple sandwiches and read books that she kept hidden in her cleaning cart. The pages were worn from multiple readings, covering topics that would have surprised anyone who bothered to look. Advanced mathematics, strategic planning, and leadership psychology filled her quiet moments between cleaning duties. The building's security guard, an elderly man named Frank, was the only person who treated Sarah with basic respect. He would nod and smile when she passed his desk, sometimes commenting on the weather or asking about her day. Frank had served in Vietnam and recognized something in Sarah's bearing that others missed. There was a stillness to her movements, a way of scanning rooms that spoke of training most people couldn't identify. One evening, as Sarah finished mopping the lobby floor, she overheard Marcus talking to his business partner about their latest venture. They were planning to acquire a small security consulting firm, joking about how easy it would be to impress the military types with their business acumen. Marcus laughed loudly, describing former soldiers as broken toys who couldn't adapt to the real world. Sarah's jaw tightened slightly, the only visible sign that his words had any effect. She continued mopping, her strokes becoming more deliberate and controlled. The building was nearly empty now, with only the executive team working late in the conference room. Through the glass walls, she could see them pointing at charts and graphs, their animated gestures reflecting their excitement about the potential deal. The security consulting firm they were targeting specialized in protecting high-profile clients and corporate executives. Marcus had done his research, learning that the company was struggling financially despite their excellent reputation. He saw an opportunity to buy them cheap and rebrand their services under his growing empire. As Sarah packed her cleaning supplies, she noticed Frank watching her with curious eyes. He had been observing her for months, noting the way she moved and carried herself. There was something about her that reminded him of the special forces soldiers he had encountered during his military service. The quiet confidence, the constant awareness of her surroundings, the way she could disappear into the background while missing nothing. That night, Sarah returned to her small apartment in a modest neighborhood across town. The space was spartanly furnished but impeccably organized. Everything had its place, from the carefully folded clothes in her dresser to the books arranged by subject on her shelves. She heated a simple dinner and sat at her small kitchen table, staring out the window at the city lights. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. The message was brief but loaded with meaning for someone who understood the language. It was an invitation to a gathering that most people would never hear about. a meeting of individuals who shared certain experiences and capabilities. Sarah read the message twice, then deleted it without responding. The next morning brought the same routine. Sarah arrived at the office building at her usual time, collected her supplies, and began her systematic cleaning of each floor. The employees were already busy with their daily activities, their voices filling the air with excitement about upcoming projects and potential profits. None of them paid any attention to the quiet woman who kept their workspace spotless, but today would be different. Today, circumstances would force Sarah to reveal skills that she had kept hidden for years. Today, the invisible cleaning lady would step out of the shadows and show everyone exactly who they had been ignoring. The morning started like any other Tuesday at Thompson Tech Solutions. Sarah pushed her cleaning cart through the familiar hallways, stopping at each office to empty wastebaskets and dust surfaces. The building hummed with its usual energy as employees arrived with their coffee cups and ambitious plans for the day. Around 10 o'clock, Sarah noticed something unusual. 3 men in dark suits had entered the building and were speaking quietly with the receptionist. Their appearance was professional, but Sarah's trained eye caught details that others missed. The way they positioned themselves to watch all entrances, the slight bulge under their jackets, and most importantly, the practiced way they scanned the room for potential threats. Frank, the security guard, seemed nervous as he checked their identification and called upstairs to announce their arrival. Sarah continued her work, moving closer to overhear their conversation without appearing interested. They were from the security consulting firm that Marcus was planning to acquire. Here for what they believed was a routine business meeting. The 3 consultants were escorted to the executive conference room on the 20th floor, where Marcus and his team waited with prepared presentations and contract proposals. Through the glass walls, Sarah could see Marcus gesturing enthusiastically as he outlined his vision for expanding their security services under his corporate umbrella. What Marcus didn't know was that this wasn't just a business meeting. The consulting firm had been investigating his company for weeks, following a trail of financial irregularities and questionable business practices. They suspected that Thompson Tech Solutions was involved in corporate espionage and illegal data collection, using their legitimate business as a cover for more sinister activities. Sarah finished cleaning the 19th floor and moved her cart toward the elevator. As she waited for the doors to open, she heard Frank's radio crackle with an urgent message. More men were approaching the building, but these weren't wearing suits. They moved with military precision and carried equipment that Frank's security training couldn't identify. The elevator doors opened, and Sarah stepped inside with her cart. As the elevator climbed toward the 20th floor, she felt the familiar tightness in her chest that came before action. Years of training had taught her to recognize when a situation was about to escalate beyond normal parameters. The conference room erupted in chaos just as Sarah emerged from the elevator. Through the glass walls, she could see Marcus standing and pointing angrily at the 3 consultants. Papers were scattered across the table, and security footage played on the large monitor, showing activities that were clearly not part of any legitimate business operation. One of the consultants spoke into a small device, and within seconds, the building's fire alarm began blaring. Emergency lights flashed in the hallways as the automatic evacuation procedures activated. Employees began streaming toward the stairwells, following the safety protocols they had practiced monthly. But Sarah knew this wasn't a drill. The men entering the building weren't responding to the fire alarm. They were using it as cover to reach the 20th floor without arousing suspicion. She pushed her cleaning cart against the wall and moved toward the conference room, her body automatically shifting into a stance that would have been recognizable to anyone with advanced tactical training. Marcus was shouting into his phone, trying to contact someone who could help him escape the situation. His business partner had already left through a private exit that connected to the parking garage. The 3 consultants remained calm, speaking quietly into their communication devices while keeping their eyes on the conference room's multiple entrances. The elevator dinged, and 4 armed men stepped onto the 20th floor. They wore tactical gear and moved with the coordinated precision of a professional team. Sarah pressed herself against the wall beside a large decorative plant, using the shadows to remain unseen while she assessed the threat level. These weren't law enforcement officers. Their equipment was too specialized, their movements too aggressive for a standard arrest operation. Sarah recognized the type of weapons they carried, and the way they communicated through hand signals. This was a private military team, hired to eliminate evidence and witnesses before any investigation could proceed. The lead operative gestured toward the conference room, and his team began moving into position. Sarah realized that everyone in that room, including the 3 consultants who had uncovered Marcus's illegal activities, were now targets. The fire alarm continued blaring, but most employees had already evacuated the lower floors. Marcus finally understood the gravity of his situation when he saw the armed men approaching. His face went pale as he realized that his business partners had decided he was more valuable as a dead scapegoat than a living liability. The consulting firm's investigation had threatened to expose a network of corporate corruption that reached far beyond his small tech company. Sarah made a decision that would change everything. For years, she had maintained her cover, hiding her true capabilities behind the facade of a simple cleaning lady. But innocent people were about to die, and her training wouldn't allow her to remain hidden when she had the skills to intervene. She moved away from the wall with fluid, silent steps that had been perfected through years of specialized training. The tactical team was focused on the conference room, unaware that the greatest threat to their mission was approaching from behind. Sarah's hand moved to her cleaning cart, where items that appeared ordinary to casual observers served very different purposes for someone who knew how to use them. The first operative never saw her coming. Sarah's movement was so fast and precise that he was unconscious before his body hit the floor. His weapon disappeared from his hands as if by magic, now held by someone who understood its capabilities far better than its original owner. The other 3 operatives turned toward the sound, their training kicking in as they searched for the source of the threat. But Sarah was already moving, using the building's architecture and her intimate knowledge of its layout to stay ahead of their response. She had cleaned these floors hundreds of times, memorizing every corner and obstacle that could provide tactical advantage. The second operative spun around, his weapon raised and ready to fire at whatever had taken down his teammate. Sarah was already behind him, moving like a shadow through the office furniture she had arranged and cleaned countless times. Her knowledge of every desk, every partition, and every blind spot gave her an advantage that no amount of tactical training could overcome. The man's weapon clattered to the floor as Sarah's precise strike rendered him unconscious. She caught the rifle before it could make noise, her movements so fluid they seemed almost choreographed. The remaining 2 operatives were now aware they faced a serious threat, but they couldn't locate their enemy in the maze of office cubicles and conference rooms. Inside the glass-walled conference room, Marcus and the 3 consultants watched in stunned silence. The woman they had dismissed as an invisible cleaning lady was systematically dismantling a professional military team with skills that defied explanation. Marcus's mouth hung open as he tried to process what he was witnessing. "Who was that?" whispered one of the consultants, pressing himself against the far wall of the conference room. "The cleaning lady," Marcus replied, his voice barely audible. We never even learned her name." Sarah moved through the office space like she owned it, which in many ways she did. Every night for 3 years, she had memorized the layout while appearing to simply mop floors and empty trash bins. She knew exactly which floorboards creaked, which lights cast shadows, and which routes provided the best tactical advantage. The third operative tried to use the reception desk as cover, but Sarah anticipated his movement. She appeared beside him as if materializing from thin air, her hand striking with surgical precision at nerve points that would incapacitate without permanent damage. His body went limp, and she gently lowered him to the ground behind the desk where he wouldn't be visible to his remaining teammate. The last operative was now alone, facing an enemy he couldn't see or predict. His training told him to establish communication with his team, but his radio only produced static. Sarah had disabled their communication hub during her first move, cutting them off from any outside support or coordination. Frank, the security guard, had taken position in the lobby stairwell where he could watch the elevator without being seen. His military experience told him that whatever was happening upstairs was far beyond anything he had encountered in his security training. The building's emergency systems were all functioning, but this wasn't the kind of emergency they were designed to handle. Sarah knew the last operative would try to reach the stairwell or elevator to escape. She positioned herself between him and all possible exit routes, using the same cleaning cart that had carried her supplies to create a mobile barrier. The cart's contents, carefully chosen and arranged over months of preparation, provided everything she needed for this situation. The operative made his move. Sprinting toward the elevator with his weapon ready, Sarah stepped into his path, and for the first time he got a clear look at his enemy. She stood calmly in the hallway, no longer trying to blend into the background. Her posture was relaxed but ready, like a coiled spring waiting for the right moment to release its energy. "Drop your weapon," Sarah said quietly, her voice carrying the kind of authority that came from years of command experience. The operative hesitated, confused by the disconnect between her appearance and her obvious capabilities. In that moment of uncertainty, Sarah moved. Her approach was direct and efficient, closing the distance between them faster than he could react. The weapon flew from his hands, and he found himself face down on the floor with his arms secured behind his back, using zip ties that had appeared from her cleaning supplies. The 20th floor fell silent except for the continuing fire alarm. Sarah stood among the 4 unconscious operatives, breathing normally despite the physical exertion. She had neutralized a professional military team without firing a single shot or causing any permanent injury. Her methods were precise, controlled, and devastatingly effective. In the conference room, Marcus and the 3 consultants slowly emerged from their hiding spots. They approached the glass wall cautiously, staring at the woman who had just saved their lives. Sarah turned to face them, and they could see her clearly for the first time. Gone was the invisible cleaning lady who had moved through their world unnoticed. In her place stood someone who radiated competence and controlled power. "The police are on their way," Sarah announced, producing a cell phone that definitely wasn't standard cleaning equipment. "These men will be unconscious for approximately 30 minutes. I suggest you use that time to secure any evidence they were trying to destroy." Marcus found his voice first, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "Who are you?" Sarah looked at him with eyes that held depths he had never bothered to notice. "I'm someone who was trained to protect people, even people who never knew they needed protection." One of the consultants, a former Marine himself, recognized something in Sarah's bearing that the others missed. The way she stood, the precise efficiency of her movements, and most importantly, the complete lack of stress or excitement after engaging multiple armed opponents. These were the hallmarks of elite military training, specifically the kind of training given to Navy SEALs. "You're military," the consultant said, more statement than question. Sarah nodded once, acknowledging the truth she had kept hidden for years. "Former Navy SEAL, specialized in close protection and threat neutralization. I've been working undercover to investigate the corporate espionage ring that Mr. Thompson's company was involved with." Marcus's legs gave out, and he sank into one of the conference room chairs. Everything he thought he knew about his world had just been turned upside down. The woman he had mocked and dismissed as beneath his notice was not only capable of single-handedly defeating a military team, but she had been investigating his illegal activities for years. The sound of sirens filled the air as police and federal agents surrounded the building. Sarah's phone buzzed with a message, and she glanced at it briefly before looking back at the group in the conference room. "The building will be secured in approximately 5 minutes, she announced. "The evidence you've gathered today will be crucial for dismantling the entire network. Mr. Thompson, you'll want to cooperate fully with the federal investigation if you hope to receive any consideration for your assistance." As if to emphasize her point, Sarah gestured toward the 4 unconscious operatives scattered around the office floor. The message was clear. The people Marcus had been working with were willing to kill to protect their secrets, and only Sarah's intervention had prevented a massacre. Federal agents flooded the 20th floor within minutes, their tactical gear and professional movements a stark contrast to the unconscious operatives scattered across the office space. Agent Rebecca Chen, the lead investigator, surveyed the scene with experienced eyes. She had seen the aftermath of many operations, but rarely one executed with such precision and restraint. "Status report." "Agent Martinez," Chen said, approaching Sarah with obvious respect. Sarah straightened, her entire demeanor shifting from invisible cleaning lady to professional operative in an instant. 4 hostiles neutralized without permanent injury. Primary targets secured with evidence intact. No civilian casualties. Marcus stared in disbelief as the conversation unfolded. The woman he had dismissed as intellectually inferior was now briefing federal agents like a seasoned professional. Her vocabulary, her bearing, and her obvious authority painted a picture completely opposite to everything he had believed about her. Agent Chen turned to address the group in the conference room. "Mr. Thompson, you're under arrest for corporate espionage." illegal data collection, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The evidence your security consultants gathered today will be instrumental in our investigation. But I don't understand, Marcus stammered, his face pale with shock. She's just the cleaning lady. How is she a federal agent? Agent Chen exchanged a look with Sarah before responding. Agent Martinez has been undercover for 3 years, gathering evidence on your organization's illegal activities. Her cover as maintenance staff allowed her to access all areas of your building and document your operations without suspicion. The 3 security consultants who had initiated the investigation watched the proceedings with newfound respect. They had spent weeks trying to gather evidence that Sarah had been collecting for years. Her position as an invisible employee had given her access to conversations, documents, and activities that no outside investigator could have obtained. Sarah began collecting items from her cleaning cart, revealing equipment that was definitely not standard janitorial supplies. Hidden compartments contained recording devices, cameras, and communication equipment. Every tool she had used to maintain her cover had also served her intelligence-gathering mission. The books, whispered Jessica from marketing, who had just returned to the floor after the all-clear was given. I saw her reading during breaks. They were always advanced textbooks, but I thought she was just pretending to understand them. Frank, the security guard, approached Sarah with a knowing smile. I figured you were military, but I never guessed federal agent. You had that look, though. Same look my special forces buddies had after they came back from deployment. Sarah acknowledged his insight with a nod. You were the only person in this building who treated me with basic human respect. Frank, that meant more than you know. Agent Chen continued processing the scene while explaining the broader investigation to the assembled group. Thompson Tech Solutions was part of a larger network of companies engaged in industrial espionage. They were stealing trade secrets, manipulating stock prices, and selling sensitive information to foreign competitors. Marcus's business empire was crumbling before his eyes, but the full extent of his situation was only beginning to become clear. The armed operatives who had come to eliminate evidence and witnesses were connected to his business partners, the same people who had helped him build his company through illegal means. The men who attacked today were hired by your partners to eliminate you along with the consultants, Agent Chen explained. They decided you had become a liability after the security firm began their investigation. Agent Martinez's intervention saved your life. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. The woman Marcus had consistently belittled and dismissed had literally saved his life while gathering evidence that would send him to prison. His arrogance and dismissive attitude had blinded him to the presence of one of the most dangerous people he had ever encountered. Sarah finished securing her equipment and prepared to leave with the federal team. As she passed the conference room, she paused to address Marcus directly for the first time in 3 years. You once said that some people are born to serve, she said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of years of silent observation. You were right, in a way. I chose to serve my country by protecting it from people who would steal its secrets for profit. The difference is that I chose my service, while you'll be serving your time whether you choose to or not. The other employees who had returned to the floor stood in stunned silence as they processed what they had witnessed. The quiet woman they had ignored and sometimes mocked had revealed herself to be one of the most highly trained professionals any of them would ever encounter. Agent Chen addressed the group one final time before leaving. Agent Martinez's cover is now blown, obviously, but her work here has been invaluable. The evidence she gathered will help us dismantle an entire network of corporate criminals. Her sacrifice of 3 years living undercover in a role that required her to endure constant disrespect shows the dedication of our federal agents. As the federal team prepared to leave, Sarah removed her cleaning uniform for the last time. Underneath, she wore the kind of practical clothing that allowed for quick movement and concealed equipment. Her transformation was complete, from invisible maintenance worker to revealed federal agent. The building's other employees began returning to their floors, but the atmosphere had completely changed. Conversations were subdued, and many people kept glancing toward the 20th floor where the impossible had just occurred. Word spread quickly through the building about what had really happened, and more importantly, about who Sarah Martinez really was. Tom from accounting, who had made numerous jokes about Sarah's intelligence and capabilities, found himself unable to concentrate on his work. Every dismissive comment he had made now echoed in his mind. knowing that the target of his mockery could have ended his life in seconds if she had chosen to do so. Jessica from marketing gathered with her colleagues, trying to process the revelation that they had been working alongside a Navy SEAL for 3 years, without ever suspecting her true identity. The woman they had pitied for her simple job and modest appearance had been one of the most elite warriors in the world. As Sarah left the building for the final time, Frank gave her a respectful salute. She returned it crisply, acknowledging the bond between veterans that transcended rank or service branch. Her 3-year mission was complete, but the impact of her revelation would continue long after she was gone. 3 weeks after the dramatic revelation at Thompson Tech Solutions, the story had become legendary throughout the corporate world. News outlets struggled to verify the details, but federal sources confirmed that a deep cover operation had successfully exposed a major industrial espionage network. The identity of the undercover agent remained classified, but employees from the building were eager to share their experiences. Sarah Martinez sat in a federal debriefing room, finally able to speak freely about her 3-year assignment. Agent Chen and a panel of supervisors reviewed her detailed reports, impressed by the thoroughness of her intelligence gathering and the precision of her final operation. "Your mission exceeded all expectations," Agent Chen noted, reviewing the extensive documentation Sarah had compiled. "The evidence you gathered has led to arrests across 7 states and 3 countries. The corporate espionage network you infiltrated was larger than we initially suspected." Sarah nodded, maintaining the professional demeanor that had served her well throughout her military and federal careers. The position provided unprecedented access to their operations. They never suspected that someone in a service role could pose any threat to their activities. The debriefing revealed the full scope of what Sarah had endured during her undercover assignment. For 3 years, she had maintained perfect emotional control while being dismissed, mocked, and treated as invisible by people whose illegal activities she was documenting. Her psychological evaluation showed remarkable resilience and dedication to the mission. Back at the Thompson Tech building, the atmosphere had completely changed. The company was under federal investigation, and most operations had been suspended pending the legal proceedings. Employees reported to work each day knowing that their jobs were likely temporary, but they couldn't stop talking about the woman who had worked among them unrecognized. Marcus Thompson sat in a federal holding facility, awaiting trial on multiple charges. His lawyers had advised him to cooperate fully with the investigation in hopes of receiving a reduced sentence. During his interviews with federal agents, he repeatedly expressed disbelief that Sarah had fooled him so completely. "She was perfect," Marcus told his attorney during one meeting. "The way she acted, the clothes she wore, even the way she carried herself. There was nothing that suggested she was anything other than what she appeared to be. I feel like an idiot for not seeing through it." His attorney reviewed the case files, noting the extensive planning that had gone into Sarah's cover identity. According to the federal reports, Agent Martinez spent 6 months in preparation for this assignment. She studied janitorial procedures, practiced her cover behavior, and developed a complete backstory that would hold up under casual scrutiny. The employees who had worked alongside Sarah for 3 years were dealing with their own emotional reactions to the revelation. Many felt embarrassed by their treatment of her, while others were amazed by her commitment to maintaining character, even when subjected to disrespect and mockery. Jessica from marketing had become something of a spokesperson for the group, giving interviews to journalists who wanted to understand what it was like to work alongside an undercover federal agent. "She was invisible to us," Jessica explained to a reporter. "Not because she was trying to hide, but because we made her invisible through our own assumptions and prejudices." The story resonated far beyond the corporate world. Social media exploded with discussions about hidden talents, the dangers of judging people by their jobs, and the dedication of federal agents who sacrifice years of their lives for dangerous undercover missions. Sarah's story became a symbol of how easily people could be overlooked and underestimated. Frank, the security guard, found himself in high demand for interviews about his interactions with Sarah. His military background had given him insights that others missed, and his respectful treatment of her stood in stark contrast to the behavior of other employees. "I knew there was something special about her," Frank told a television reporter. "The way she moved, the way she watched everything. But I figured she was just former military trying to readjust to civilian life." I never imagined she was still serving her country in such an important way. The security consulting firm that had initiated the investigation praised Sarah's work and expressed regret that their own investigation had nearly gotten everyone killed. Their report detailed how close they had come to being eliminated by the armed operatives, and how Sarah's intervention had saved not only their lives but the entire investigation. Agent Chen made a rare public statement about the operation, carefully avoiding any details that might compromise future missions. Agent Martinez's dedication to this assignment exemplifies the sacrifices our federal agents make to protect national security. Her ability to maintain her cover while gathering critical intelligence shows the highest levels of professionalism and skill. The revelation had broader implications for corporate security and federal investigation techniques. Security experts began recommending that companies pay closer attention to all employees, not just those in sensitive positions. The idea that a cleaning person could have complete access to a building's activities became a wake-up call for many organizations. Sarah's former Navy SEAL teammates weren't surprised by the story when it reached their circles. Those who had served with her knew about her exceptional abilities and her commitment to service. What impressed them was her willingness to endure 3 years of disrespect and invisibility to complete her mission successfully. That's exactly the kind of thing Sarah would do, commented her former SEAL team leader in a classified interview. She understood that the mission was bigger than any personal discomfort she might experience. Her ego never got in the way of getting the job done. The psychological impact on the Thompson Tech employees continued to evolve as they processed their experiences. Many began questioning their assumptions about other service workers and people in jobs they had previously considered beneath their notice. The revelation that someone they had dismissed could possess such extraordinary capabilities forced them to reconsider their worldview. Training programs for federal agents began incorporating elements of Sarah's successful cover operation. Her techniques for maintaining character under stress and gathering intelligence while appearing completely innocuous became part of the curriculum for future undercover assignments. The legal proceedings against Marcus and his associates moved forward. Sarah's testimony would be crucial for securing convictions. Her 3 years of careful documentation had created an ironclad case that would likely result in significant prison sentences for everyone involved in the corporate espionage network. 6 months later, Sarah Martinez stood before a packed federal courthouse as the final verdicts were read in the corporate espionage case. Marcus Thompson received a 15-year sentence, while his business associates faced even longer terms for their roles in the international conspiracy. The judge specifically commended the undercover work that had made these convictions possible. Outside the courthouse, Sarah finally spoke publicly about her experience for the first time. Reporters gathered around as she addressed the impact of her 3-year mission and what it had taught her about human nature and social assumptions. This case demonstrates how easily we can become invisible to each other when we make judgments based on job titles or social status, Sarah said, her voice calm and measured. The people who ignored me weren't evil. They were simply operating under assumptions that prevented them from seeing who I really was. The Thompson Tech building had been sold to pay legal fees and victim compensation. Most of the former employees had found new jobs, but many carried lasting lessons from their experience with Sarah. The building's new owners had installed a plaque in the lobby, commemorating the federal agents who risked their lives in service to their country. Frank, the security guard, had been hired by the federal government as a consultant on building security protocols. His ability to recognize Sarah's military bearing, even when others missed it completely, had impressed investigators who wanted to understand how to better identify potential threats and assets in corporate environments. Jessica from marketing had used her experience to start a nonprofit organization focused on recognizing the hidden talents and contributions of service workers. Her interviews about working alongside Sarah had evolved into a movement encouraging people to look beyond job titles and social positions to see the full humanity of everyone they encounter. The former Thompson Tech employees who had participated in mocking or dismissing Sarah had each dealt with their shame differently. Some had reached out through federal channels to apologize, while others had quietly changed their behavior toward service workers in their new jobs. The experience had become a powerful lesson about the consequences of casual cruelty and thoughtless dismissal of others. Sarah's story had become required reading at federal law enforcement academies, business schools, and military training programs. Her ability to maintain perfect character while enduring years of disrespect was studied as an example of exceptional mental discipline and mission commitment. The security consulting firm that had unknowingly triggered the final confrontation had offered Sarah a position as a senior consultant. Their business had grown dramatically after their role in exposing the espionage network became public knowledge, and they wanted her expertise in corporate security and threat assessment. Agent Chen had been promoted to head a new division focused on long-term undercover operations in corporate settings. Sarah's success had proven the value of patient, methodical intelligence gathering over more aggressive investigative techniques. The division was recruiting agents with military backgrounds who could adapt to civilian cover identities. During her final federal debriefing, Sarah reflected on the unexpected emotional impact of her assignment. "The hardest part wasn't maintaining my cover or gathering intelligence," she admitted. "It was watching good people diminish themselves through their treatment of someone they considered beneath them. They became smaller than they needed to be because they couldn't see past their own assumptions." The psychological evaluation teams had been particularly interested in how Sarah had maintained her sense of self-worth while being consistently treated as invisible or inferior. Her techniques for emotional protection during deep cover assignments were being incorporated into training programs for other agents facing similar challenges. Marcus Thompson, serving his sentence in federal prison, had become a cautionary tale among white-collar criminals. His complete failure to recognize the threat posed by someone he considered intellectually and socially inferior had become legendary among criminal justice students studying the psychology of criminal overconfidence. The band theory international implications of the case continued to unfold as foreign governments investigated their own connections to the espionage network. Sarah's intelligence had exposed corruption and illegal activities across multiple countries, leading to diplomatic tensions and corporate reforms on a global scale. Sarah's transition back to open federal service had been smooth, but she chose to work in training and consultation rather than return to active field operations. Her experience had given her unique insights into human nature and social dynamics that proved valuable in preparing other agents for their own challenging assignments. The Naval Special Warfare community had quietly celebrated Sarah's achievement, though the details remained classified within military circles. Her successful completion of one of the longest and most psychologically demanding undercover assignments in federal history had enhanced the reputation of SEAL training and mental conditioning. A year after the trials concluded, Sarah accepted an invitation to speak at Frank's retirement ceremony. The security guard who had been the only person to treat her with consistent respect during her undercover years was stepping down after 40 years of service, and he had specifically requested that she address the gathering. "Frank saw me as a human being worthy of respect when others saw only a job title," Sarah told the assembled crowd of security professionals and federal agents. "His simple kindness and recognition of my humanity made those 3 difficult years bearable. He represents the best of what we can be when we choose to see each other clearly." Frank wiped away tears as Sarah continued her tribute. The old veteran had never imagined that his basic decency toward a cleaning lady would become part of a story that inspired federal agents and corporate leaders around the world. The ripple effects of Sarah's revelation continued to spread through unexpected channels. Corporate training programs now included modules on recognizing hidden talents and avoiding assumptions based on job roles. Business schools taught case studies about the dangers of dismissing employees in service positions who might have access to sensitive information. Sarah had established a scholarship fund for military veterans transitioning to civilian careers, particularly those taking positions that might seem beneath their qualifications while they adjusted to life outside the service. Her own experience had shown her how many talented people might be working in jobs that didn't reflect their true capabilities. The cleaning company that had provided Sarah's cover employment had unknowingly become part of federal law enforcement history. They proudly displayed a letter of commendation from the federal government, though they couldn't reveal the specific details of how their employee had served her country while appearing to simply clean offices. Years later, former Thompson Tech employees would still share the story of Sarah Martinez with new colleagues and friends. The tale of the invisible cleaning lady who revealed herself to be a Navy SEAL had become a powerful reminder about the dangers of judging people by their appearances or social positions. Sarah herself had found peace in her new role training federal agents for undercover assignments. She had learned that her greatest skill wasn't just her ability to fight or gather intelligence, but her capacity to understand human nature and use people's assumptions against them when necessary to protect innocent lives. The building where Sarah had spent 3 years being ignored and dismissed now housed a federal training facility. New agents walked the same hallways where she had pushed her cleaning cart, learning about patience, observation, and the power of becoming invisible in plain sight. Marcus Thompson's cell became a place of reluctant education as he slowly understood the magnitude of what he had missed. The woman he had dismissed as intellectually inferior had outsmarted him at every turn, gathering evidence that destroyed his empire while he remained completely oblivious to the threat she represented. In the end, Sarah's story became more than just a successful federal operation. It became a mirror that forced people to examine their own assumptions and biases. The shocking revelation that everyone had ignored a Navy SEAL for 3 years served as a permanent reminder that extraordinary people can be found in the most ordinary places. If only we have the wisdom to look beyond the surface and see each other as we truly are. The invisible cleaning lady had taught the world a lesson that would echo through corporate boardrooms, federal agencies, and everyday interactions for generations to come. Her greatest victory wasn't defeating armed operatives or exposing criminal conspiracies, but proving that respect and human dignity should never depend on job titles, social status, or the assumptions others make about who we are supposed to be.